Koppal District in Karnataka, located in the Deccan Plateau, is one of the last remaining strongholds of the Indian wolf and is home to the second protected area dedicated to wolf conservation in India, the Pankupura Wolf Sanctuary. The region also supports a healthy population of striped hyenas, sloth bears, leopards, small carnivores, and antelopes. In this episode, we are joined by Indrajit Ghorpade, founder of the Deccan Conservation Foundation, who has pioneered efforts to conserve Koppal's unique grassland ecosystems. Tune in to explore one of wild Karnataka's most underrated landscapes, the key threats facing its biodiversity, and the conservation priorities needed to secure its future. So, welcome, Indrajit, to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on today to talk about Koppal and its wildlife.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
What makes Koppal so special in terms of wildlife and biodiversity?
Basically, the Deccan Plateau itself has been neglected. Mainly because, it's an arid, dry, rain shadow area of South India. People considered grasslands as wastelands and were not really in tune with being sensitized to the wildlife and to the natural history of the Deccan. Mainly because we are a very tiger-centric country. So when you talk about Indian wildlife, you talk about forests. So you talk about the tiger, you talk about the forest, you talk about only that portion of India that is covered with flora or with. So the Deccan being grasslands has been basically neglected. But we had some amazing wildlife which were very endemic. And the result of this neglect is that we lost the Asiatic cheetah nationally. Regionally, we have lost species like the lesser florican, the great Indian bustard, the caracal, and many, many other species, including the Indian wolves and the striped hyena, which are considered today threatened. So this is basically a direct result of the neglect. But people are not aware of the kind of unique landscape that the Deccan has. This is basically, especially Koppal. Koppal is in a transition zone where many types of habitats overlap. Like, for instance, in the north part of Koppal, you get the sandstone hills like in Badami and all, which end in Koppal. In the south, you have the Tungabhadra River, which is the riverine ecosystem. And between these two, you have the black cotton soil or the Yaribhumi and the red cotton soil, which is the Masari, as we call it in Kannada. These are, open plains mixed with rocky scrub jungles. So it makes a very interesting biosphere. It makes a very interesting, landscape, which then leads to the kind of biodiversity that we have. Like, for instance, the blackbuck is seen mainly in the black cotton soil areas. The sloth bears are seen in rocky scrub jungles. The Indian wolf is seen in both the landscapes. The great Indian bustard is seen in the grasslands, or what was originally the grasslands. So this mix of potpourri of wildlife made Koppal very distinct and an amazing kind of biodiversity that existed, let's say, about a century or so.
Pankupura Wildlife Sanctuary was established in the district in 2021. So it's the second wolf sanctuary in India. So what is the significance of this?
It's not a question of significance. It's a question of preservation. It's a question of conservation. Where do we start? Now, let's assume that, okay, let's put the brakes on the kind of degradation of the habitat, the loss of wildlife, the loss of, its natural landscape like the grasslands, etc. Okay, we accept that. We accept that there has been tremendous damage, which has resulted in these very low numbers of unhealthy populations, which are either isolated, human dominated, degraded, which have had an impact on the overall health of the ecosystem. So, in order to try and revive I won't say go back to the past glory of the Deccan where the cheetah and the hyena and even the lions once existed in the south, we were trying to arrest the decline, and we were focused on what we can do for the future in terms of being practical. I mean, you have to be practical. We cannot create a Bandipur or a Ranthambore anymore because you don't have that kind of space. So we took it upon ourselves to identify the apex predator, the iconic species, or the flagship species, which in this case was the Indian wolf, because we had lost the apex predator, which was the Asiatic cheetah. So keeping the Indian wolf as the umbrella species, under which all the other associated species would directly or indirectly benefit. Like in the case of the tiger and the Western Ghats, you protect the tiger and you basically preserve the entire ecosystem. So that was the logic behind us focusing on protecting and reviving the healthy population of wolves, because that would translate into the overall health and the overall revival of these, not only the species, but also of the habitats. Unfortunately, in Koppal, and I'm talking now, basically, I'm talking about Koppal. I'm not talking about the rest of the landscape because this is an area that I have the most information about, and I would like to concentrate more on Koppal district. So in Koppal district, we found that there were mainly non-protected areas. There were no sanctuaries in Koppal. So coming back to the Bankapur Wolf Sanctuary, this has a history. The history of the Bankapur Sanctuary was that we basically accepted that we had to start somewhere, and we had to start with what I call a holistic approach to conservation. So we started at the top. And I say at the top, I talk about the apex predator. Then we had to be practical in terms of what was the ground realities and what was the situation on the ground as far as Koppal was concerned. As I said, we were predominantly non-protected areas. There was not much forest except for the eastern side where you had the Hampi, Anegundi, rocky scrub jungles. And you had no sanctuaries at all. In fact, Bankapur was the first sanctuary. We had, of course, a water conservation reserve on the river, which was straddling both the Ballari districts and Koppal districts, with the Tungabhadra River being the ground boundary between two districts. So it was not only a Koppal conservation reserve, it was a Koppal Ballari conservation reserve. So we had no sanctuary, we had no protected areas. So basically, this was what I called a human-dominated landscape. And it was a landscape that was totally degraded. When I say totally degraded, I mean, alarming facts. Like 90% of the grasslands were gone. These are all now converted into agricultural fields, farms, or whatever you want to call them, horticulture. So basically, all the wildlife were living in these human-dominated landscapes, in these non-protected landscapes. But during our study, when I started in 2016-17, we realized that we had to put out a kind of a roadmap. This roadmap included what I told the chief conservator of forest. And I said, so what can you protect when you don't know what is left there to protect? So let's start at the bottom. Now we're starting at the bottom. What is the wildlife that is now still existing? Where are they surviving? and what are the issues and concerns that we need to address to kind of balance out the human wildlife conflict, and also to put together a policy that would be pragmatic, where it would not be leaning to either side, either towards the humans, where then there would be a negative connotation to, like, for instance, if we told them that you are not important, it's only the wildlife that is important, then it would be a problem. And at the same time, we needed to, as I said, map the entire Koppal district in terms of what wildlife was surviving where. This led us to our data studies, our research, and the compilation of information that we could put together, whether oral or in terms of our actual research. Here we found that there were still kind of isolated pockets, which was a heartening sign. Like, now again connecting back to the Bankapur science. Now, Bankapur was last of the refuges of the wolf. It was a breeding area of the wolf. It was a small area, 300 to 500 acres or whatever it is. I'm not too sure of the actual figures, but it was a small area. In fact, I had a lot of people in the State Wildlife Board who contested, well, how can you create a sanctuary in a small area like 300 to 500 acres, especially for the wolf, which has a home range or a range of almost 100 square kilometers. So a wolf travels 100 square kilometers. That's its home range. So how can you restrict it to just this pocket of 500 acres? Then I had to explain to these non-believers that, to me, this was like a maternity ward. To me, this was an area from November to March where it was totally protected. The mother who was pregnant could give birth and bring up a young till they become subadults and join the pack. This was the strategy. And it became very successful, as you must have heard in the press, litters of 6 and 7, which we have been seeing for the last 7 years. But only now, because it has become a sanctuary, it is being reported. So Bankapur started as a sanctuary to protect the wolves in their breeding days. So this was the history of Bankapur, where for 5 years we conducted research, data, studies, and put together a project report with scientists and naturalists and conservationists, people like myself, and put together this report, gave it to the State Wildlife Board. And fortunately enough, I was able to argue my case. And they declared, I think in 2021, they declared it was delayed because of COVID, but what it designated as a wolf sanctuary, one of the few wolf sanctuaries in India.
And how many wolves do you think are there approximately in the entire district?
I'm not going to put myself in that position, to be honest, unless there is a scientific survey done, which has not been done for the last 30 years. I think it was Kumara who did it way back in, I think, the 80s or something like that. So, I mean, we have no idea, especially considering that, number one, wolves are very difficult to differentiate. Unlike tigers, who you can recognize with stripes, wolves look very similar, except for male and female, or if they have certain scars or distinguishing marks on the body, like a cut tail or an injury or half the ear bitten off, things like that. So we have no way. And plus that they roam around quite a bit. So today they may be here, tomorrow they'll be 40 kilometers on the other side of Koppal. And somebody seeing them there may think that it's another individual, but it may be the same individual that has gone from Mandalmari or Bankapur gone all the way up to Kushtigi or to the western end of Koppal. So I would not put myself in that situation. I would not know. But we are hopeful that there are surviving packs, could be 4 or 5 packs in Cooper. And these packs vary from 2 to 8. This also, there are fluctuations annually because of natural deaths, unnatural deaths. And we don't know where the wolves disperse after they have been outcast from the pack, because the pack then, especially in areas where there is low natural prey, the wolves prefer to have smaller packs, a more tight-knit kind of pack, so that they have enough food to eat. It's difficult feeding a pack of 8 to 10 to 12 animals. It's easier to feed a pack of 4. So I think this is an adjustment that they have gone through in terms of evolving, where they go into smaller packs, into smaller territories. Now their territories are very small. I've seen wolf packs, different wolf packs, hardly 15 kilometers away, as the crow flies, of course. So there are wolves, but I cannot be certain of how many there are unless there is a survey done, which is what we had noted in 2022. We got the permissions, we got the funding. We wanted to even radio collar 6 to 7 species, including the carnivores, all of them. That's the bear, the hyena, the fox, the jackal, the wolf, the jungle cat, etc. But that never took off because of government policies, and COVID came in between, and it has been shelved, whether temporarily or permanently, I would know. So as far as wolf populations are concerned, my answer to your specific question would be, there are wolves, but we don't know how many.
So, how prevalent are the interactions between wolves and free-ranging dogs in the region? Are there many cases of hybrids?
I've seen a few. But again, as I said, this is something. See, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a naturalist. I'm not an expert. I'm just a nature lover who has taken it upon myself to. So I will not talk as a scientist or as a botanist or as an expert. No. I will talk as a son of the soil, a local, a person who has lived and has been brought up in this region, who understands the ways and habitats and habits of these species that are there. So I am able to talk about them because I have experiences with them, first-hand experience with them. So coming to hybridization of wolves and dogs, wolves and jackals. I've seen a hybrid jackal also. So it may be happening, it is happening, but as I said, unless there is a detailed survey done on, number one, the populations of wolves, the effects of dogs and interbreeding, the causes and concerns of their habitat loss, etc., etc. This has to be a scientific study. This has to be a scientific study, because otherwise you won't have a basis to plan a long-term policy. So yes, hybridization happens because the wolves are very close to the shepherds. The shepherds have their shepherd dogs. They are the ones that protect the sheep and the herds of sheep from dogs, from the wolves. So there could be instances where a stray male wolf, which is not the alpha wolf and cannot breed with the female because of the hierarchy, may take the opportunity when there is a female dog on heat nearby, and this could result in these hybrids being born. This is my take on this, but this subject needs to be studied more to get to the reality in terms of. But 100%, there is no doubt that there is hybridization going on. not only hybridization, I think more important than hybridization is the lack of gene pool transfer. You see, in the earlier days, what used to happen was wolves from one pack would breed with the wolf from another pack. So there was gene pool transfer. The DNA from one pack went to the other. That is how the survival of the fittest theory of the law of the jungle, brought out the best in these species, where the healthiest, the strongest would survive, would become the alpha, and would breed. So that would help in preserving the original DNA of the species. But today we find that there is a lot of interbreeding also, because there are no wolves nearby. That is the packs which are the competitors who would, like I saw last year. I did see an intruder, as we call them, was a huge male. The first time I saw him in that area, and his behavior was extremely suspicious, because he didn't know the lay of the land. Unlike the local wolves, they know every nook and corner. But this guy was disoriented. But he was definitely a male which was looking for a partner, because it was the end of October, November. This was the breeding season. And he probably came into this area looking for a female. And if that happened, I don't know if that happened, because it was last year. So if that happened, you would have a pack which would have the DNA of two separate packs of wolves. So this is as far as your question of hybridization is.
So how serious is the issue of human-wolf conflict in Koppal? How about conflict with other large carnivores in the region?
Okay, come again. What's the question?
How serious is the issue of human-wolf conflict in Koppal, and how about conflict with other large carnivores in the region?
An animal conflict is there irrespective of the species or the region or the part of or which part of India. I mean, this is a reality. One of the main reasons that the forest department is facing is trying to minimize an animal conflict. I mean, it's a challenge. Whether it's the elephant, whether it's tiger, whether it's a leopard. So the wolf also is in constant interaction with humans. Wolves are basically shy creatures. They do not like to be, do not like to encounter humans. They would, if they see a human, they would move aside, unless, it comes to, push comes to shove, where some miscreants are, trying to attack a den, where the mother is there, the alpha male comes to the spot, there's somebody trying to either kill the wolves or pick up the pups, and then there is conflict. Or if, in many cases I have seen or experienced, is when the wolves, because of the domestic dog issue, there are, infections or diseases that spread when dogs, carry these and pass it on to the wolves, and they become rabid. So rabid wolves become extremely ferocious. Their brains are damaged, and so they go on a killing spree. And thus there is that misnomer that wolves are ferocious and they're killers, etc., etc. These few examples give the wolf a bad name, like the proverbs and the folklore, and the big bad wolf and the lone wolf. Anyway, when there is a terrorist attack, they will say it's a lone wolf attack. I don't understand how a wolf can be compared to a terrorist. So, I mean, these are all the misnomers which we have been brought up on, and these need to be corrected. And this is where we are in terms of creating the awareness that a wolf is a proud animal. It's an intelligent animal. It likes to be left alone. And it would rather stay away from whole humans. But unfortunately, the flight paths collide, and so humans and wolves are directly in conflict or in touch with each other on a daily basis. I mean, it's the wolves what going from hunting areas 30 miles away back to the den. They will definitely have to maneuver through avoiding humans till they reach their den or denning spots or their resting areas. So it's a challenge for them. It's like what we call it's a challenge for them. So that is as far as the man-animal conflict is concerned. As far as the animal-to-animal conflict is concerned, it's either minimal or not there at all. I mean, I have seen, especially in Bankapu, it's a classic example where, it's a case study where this one den which had about 4 to 5 openings, which was about half an acre. This whole den was an half an acre rock right on top. And in the same den, I have had camera traps of many species using them at the same time. You had the bear coming in and the leopard going out. You had the hyena coming in, the rusty spotted cat coming in, and the wolf using the same dens, the hyenas using the same den, the civet cats using the same den. So they were living they were coexisting. I mean, I think we humans should learn from wildlife that if they can coexist with each other, why can't humans and wildlife? In fact, there is another example of a very, very small, it's hardly, I wouldn't even say about 10,000 square feet rocky scrub jungle. Just a rocky kind of a pimple in an open area, which is next to a village. And because it's rocky and you cannot farm in it, it's been left like that. So that became denning and breeding ground of the jackal, the fox, and the jungle cat. All together living and breeding. It was like a high-rise apartment where you would actually see, I got footages of the fox with its cubs, the cat with its kittens, and the jackal with its cubs on 3 different sides of this rocky boulder. So they were living together. Conflict between wildlife is minimal. Of course, when they say conflict, it's not deadly conflict. It's not fatal. There would probably be skirmishes where, a jackal would growl or, chase away an intruder like a fox which came too close to the den when the pups were there. Such motherly instincts would be there, but you cannot term it as a conflict.
So what do you think has to be done broadly across Koppal to conserve the biodiversity better?
See, according to me, conservation is not rocket science. Conservation is 80% education and awareness. If human beings realize that wildlife is a part of the ecosystem and it is up to them to live in harmony and coexist with nature. Not talking about wildlife now, I'm talking nature, because this is where we, talk in segments. We must talk holistically. Like, for instance, a bird cannot breed unless it has a nest. And if that nest, if it doesn't have a tree or a shrub, or like a woodpecker have a hollow in a dead a branch or a trunk, then it can't breed. That is why you see hoopos and sparrows now breeding in sheds, because they don't have the natural breeding grounds anymore. They're adapting. But unfortunately, some species just cannot adapt. Like, take the instance of the great Indian bustard. Now, the great Indian bustard, I have records of the great Indian bustard breeding in my own ancestral land. But they were breeding there because my ancestral land was relatively free of human footprint, because it was our own ancestral holding, and we did not have too much of called humans moving around. And the buster did come. I think it was in the 70s or 80s. I'm not too sure, but I took photographs, sent it to BNHS, and it is recorded in the Bombay Natural History Society that a bustard had laid an egg in the private property of the Ghorpades. So, number one is that we have to educate them. Number two is the loss of habitat. This is one of the reasons for the present situation regarding the tremendous loss of flora, fauna, habitats, wilderness, and the spaces for wildlife to survive. So they don't have just like we have a roof over our head where we live. They need a home beneath their feet where they can survive. So if they don't have that home beneath their feet, which is either a grassland, a scrub jungle, a thorny scrub jungle, a rocky scrub jungle, a yeri bhumi, a masari, they can't survive. That's where you see populations will be decimated. Like today, you cannot even see a lapwing, which was a common bird, the red-wattled or the yellow-wattled, or the Indian courser. They are all on the decline. And these, because they're not exotic or because they're grassland species, nobody is bothered. Like, for instance, the Jordan's courser. And the Jordan's courser is today supposed to be extinct. I heard that they did find they did hear some calls the other day. It was reported. I hope that is true and the Jordan's courser is not extinct. But many other species of birds, especially ground nesting birds, populations have been decimated. So habitat is very important. That is the primary reason for loss of our natural world. The second, of course, is hunting and poaching, illegal wildlife trade, what they call hunting during festivals, which was a custom. This has to stop. Even though the Wildlife Protection Act 1971 is there, which bans hunting, hunting still goes on. I mean, these are reported every day in the press, whether it's a tiger or an elephant or a deer or an antelope or even a lesser, a smaller game like florican, francolin, whales, hare. They're all hunted. Porcupine, civet cats, even jungle cats are eaten, even hyenas are eaten in our place. So this is how serious hunting and poaching is. So that's the second reason. And the third, as I said, is education and awareness. If we can create that awareness, if we can educate people that we should learn to, we are the custodians, that humans are the custodians, we are the protectors, we are the trustees. It is our constitutional duty to protect and preserve and save the rest of the natural world. So if that can be translated on the ground with these three verticals, then not only the verticals, but then you go along the horizontal. You catch hold of all the people, whether it's just the child going to school, whether it's the principal, whether it's the tailor, whether it's the farmer, whether it's the shepherd, all of them, what I call the horizontal strategic partners, all of them have to be taken into confidence and all of them have to become the custodians. Then vertically, it could be the prime minister and it could be the chief minister, it could be the forest department, it could be the irrigation department, it could be the revenue department. They are all bound by the constitution to contribute to preserving and protecting our natural world and our natural heritage. So if we can preserve architectural heritages like Hampi and Taj Mahal, why not our natural heritages? These are our natural heritages. So we have to take a call now, because we are reaching that point where it could be a point of no return. If for many species, if this is not addressed very seriously, as I said, vertically and horizontally. So this is the answer to your question as to what needs to be done, what has to be done, and what is the ground reality. Ground reality is that we have our rural population is totally disconnected with nature, and our rural population has become insensitive to the natural world, and we don't have pride in our own natural history, our natural heritage, and we have to bring that back. Like, for instance, when I tell people in Koppal, I say, listen, you guys, Koppal is one of the few places left in India where you have the Indian hills. Are you not proud of that? This is like the Bishnois in Rajasthan. You have to be proud. It has to become self-regulated. You cannot expect the forest department to protect unprotected areas. Not possible. So this must become self-regulated. It must become a policy where it must be a household policy. Every house, like every village, if you have a 10-acre Kavan Park or Lal Bagh, every village, if it has a small patch of 10 acres, you can imagine how many millions of acres of microhabitats we can. This was there in the past. For instance, in the old ages, in Belgaum, if you go, they are called Mavin Top. Mavin Top is mango orchards or mango. Every village had a top. So that top was a place where you could conduct your rituals, your weddings, your functions. And it was an area which was like a pub. And when the humans were using it, so also were the birds and the animals who used to frequent this place and come there to whether to eat the jamun or the mango or the fig or whatever it could be. So this was so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The wheel has already been invented by our ancestors. We just have to revive it. So our DCF's roadmap is to try and create what we call microhabitats. So if you have 10 Bankapurs in Koppal, it will make a tremendous impact in reviving habitats and repopulating declining populations of wildlife. Then the other main reason that which are smaller, which are less important, but also as important. I mean, things like roadkills. Now, roadkills nobody talks about. Hundreds of animals and birds or reptiles are killed every minute in the world somewhere. If you add this up, the numbers are staggering. So this is one. The other is the matter of what they call the migration routes, or where one habitat is connected to the other. Those areas are now being cut off. So a bear going from one area to the other area, this were what in wildlife terms they were called corridors. These corridors are no more there. So without the corridors, the animals are now restricted to that pocket. That is where the inbreeding happens, and that is where then they will die out. So animals need to move from one area to the other. But unfortunately, roads and highways and railway lines and this crisscrossing across like a web, it's a killer. I mean, I call it killer routes. They're killer routes. So there has to be some policy for that. Like that, there are many other smaller issues like predator-prey ratios. Now, when you talk about the wolf, now how can the wolf survive if it doesn't have food? All the natural prey, 80% of the natural prey is gone. The wolf is today surviving. I can very confidently tell you that the wolf is surviving today because of the shepherd and because of the sheep. Our studies have shown that 80% of the diet of the wolf are livestock. But this is not the case with other species. So they will die out. Like, for instance, if you take the jungle cat. Now, there are no rats or mice in the field and they are killed because of pesticides. Then what do they hunt? If there are no small game, as we call it, and they are poached by humans. And then there is a competition between humans and wildlife for the same food source. This affects populations. So when I talk about conservation, I'm not talking only about the wolf, I'm talking holistically. So if there is a holistic approach, anything is possible.
And talk about the Deccan Conservation Foundation. What is your long-term vision with this organization, and what is the idea behind it?
The Deccan Conservation Foundation was a knee-jerk reaction to when I saw the wolf after 30 years in 2015-16 in Koppal. When I took up wildlife photography to escape Bangalore's urban jungle, I used to go to Koppal, to my ancestral home, very often, or more often than I used to go earlier in the last 20 years. So I used to go out for wildlife photography, and while I was photographing blackbucks one day, we were very, very lucky to sight a wolf. And this got me thinking that, damn it, the wolves are still here. The wolves are surviving. I thought the wolves were, we had lost the wolves in Koppal. Then I thought that I could work with the forest department, and they made me wildlife warden. But those are all, I would put it very bluntly, they are quite important posts, and they cannot deliver anything. So I tried that for 2 years. So in 2016-17, I started Deccan Conservation Foundation to, as I said, go on this roadmap. And the mantra was to create a platform where we would have a level playing field between the exotic species like the tigers, which are the Bollywood of India, and the wolf, which was, I think, had to be given some recognition and respect. So I started working on, as I told you earlier while I was talking, that we create this data bank. You cannot find a solution unless you diagnose the problem. So we went on this problem diagnosing mission for 5 years, compiled all the data, made a project report. It was not only for the wolf, it was for the wolf, for the carnivores, for the herbivores. It was basically a bird's eye view of Koppal through a worm's eye view of through Deccan Conservation Foundation. So this resulted in Bankapur, and now we are also trying to push for another area, which is not a complete forest land, but forest and private land. So we have asked them to declare it as a conservation reserve, Wolf Conservation Reserve, because it's an area called Mandalmari, which is again another breeding ground where, if it is protected, could serve as a breeding ground for another pack of wolves. Because we find that there's another very serious issue, that wherever there is revenue lands like this, it becomes a magnet for a government to give it out to industries, even your what do you call windmills now. Windmills are coming up in their hundreds in Koppal. There is a windmill which has come up in the last 3 months, just 500 meters from the den. So these are very serious issues. And within all these issues, which is like running a gauntlet, if the wolf can survive, then I think DCF has done its small bit in the long-term plan of saving the wolf in India. So this is and if the wolf survives, then all the other associated species, as I said, will get their due share of the cake, and they will also get the protection that they deserve. And hopefully, we can revitalize this once vibrant ecosystem. So this is DCF's agenda: to preserve the habitats and protect the wildlife. Simple.
So what have been some of the biggest challenges you have faced so far in your conservation career, and what about the best memories?
Oh, challenges there. I can't even. I mean, it's there's a huge, long list of challenges, starting with subconsciously converting the locals. I think that has been the biggest challenge, because it was a very negative connotation of wildlife. Nobody cared. And they would, in fact, when I first started in 2016-17, looking for the wolf, driving for hours from sunrise to sunset, when they would see my vehicle, they would all, call out to me and laughed at me, saying, "Yun hucha bandavane, yun hucha bandavane." In Kannada, that means this madman has come. They didn't understand what it was that what made me so interested in the wolf. And then subconsciously converting them to believers was the biggest challenge. And I think we have come a fair bit in this direction. The other challenges, of course, the main challenge that I face is funding. Nobody gives money for wildlife conservation. Very difficult. And without money, you need costs and expenses. I had to, 5 years out of pocket, I funded my own conservation law. I never got any funds from anybody, and I got Bankapur declared. So I can proudly say that it was totally a one-man show. But now without funds, it's very difficult. Things like camera traps, paying the naturalists, paying the local village, what do you call, observers and village watchers, as we call them. This takes money to get researchers, to pay naturalists, to do studies of new potential areas that we find. These are all these are all have costs, and if these costs are met with, then we can carry out these exercises and campaigns. Like even let's take the education and awareness and going around school children every week and showing them films of wildlife, talking to them, giving them some coloring pencils, or get them interested in wildlife. All this costs money. So sponsors and donors, very, very difficult to get. And if we are given that support, I'm sure there is an obligation in the corporate sector, but they should meet us halfway, and we are willing to contribute our knowledge, our experience, and our so many years and so many decades of us living there. I mean, I am a son of the sun. I mean, my life is a true story. So what I have and what I can offer is what is on the table when it comes to my contribution. What is my contribution? As I said, I'm not an expert. I haven't come out from Wildlife Institute or from Smithsonian or anything like that. I am a self-taught naturalist and quite capable of understanding the problems and tailoring the solutions on a need-based kind of campaign. So these are some of the challenges. Then, of course, the other great challenge was the poacher. I mean, he's he's like a terrorist. He's a nature's terrorist. He's a nature's terrorist. I mean, I have seen, I protect a jungle cat family for 6 months. The mother gives birth, brings up her kitten, 3 months, 4 months. And then one fine day, you see these accelerator cables being tied to the den opening, and you see these poachers escaping with kitten strung around accelerator cables. So I saved them for 6 months and they are lost in one night. So poachers are a serious threat. We have to mitigate that. It has to be a zero tolerance policy. And again, as I said, it's something that we can't do. That's the job of the government, the police, Forest CID, Forest Department, Revenue Department. They have to form what I had noted a task force where we have anti-poaching squads, where we warn people, we put up posters, We arrest a few and make an example of them where they're denied bail, their vehicles are impounded and become government property. These are all very effective ways, but the local guy cannot do it because a threat to his own safety, his own life. So this is another challenge. Then, as I said, the overall insensitivity of the local people, whether it's the press don't even know, they cannot. If you talk to most, forget the press, you talk to any common man on the road and there is a wolf, you may not recognize it. How to differentiate a wolf from a dog or a jackal? It's not easy. So sometimes I laugh at and we joke around saying that the wolf has survived because people may have mistaken it for a dog. And unlike the hyena, which is totally distinct because of its stripe and its ferocious look, they are targeted. Now, it's very sad. So that's one of the other issues that I have that we face. There are many. There's a kind of a bucket list of do's and don'ts. And if these do's, which are, as I said, education, awareness, etc., and the don'ts, which are poaching, habitat loss, and things like that, if they are put together in a cohesive kind of a machine, then it will take off. Then it will become a grassroots level movement. Then once it becomes a grassroots level movement, and once it becomes a people's movement, then sky's the limit. And sky's the limit. Within a decade, you will get birds singing, insects. Where are the insects? Where are the bees? Where are the reptiles? Where are the snakes which regulate the population of the rats for the farmer? And then the fox comes and eats the rats. Today, the fox doesn't have rats to eat. So, this is something which people need to sit back, take in, breathe slowly, and kind of think deep and hard as to whether all this is worth it. And as I said, it's not rocket science. It's very simple. All you do is leave that wildlife alone. Damn it, just leave it. Don't interfere with it for 10 years. They'll bounce back, like the case of Mandalmari. Mandalmari was totally poached out. There was no porcupine, there was no peacock, there was no civet cat, there was nothing there when I went in and found the dens of the wolves. And in 5 years, we got everything back. The jackals came back, the foxes came back, the monitor lizard came back, the porcupines came back. So it's all a question of live and let live. Let them live. Leave them alone. And they will survive. That's one of the reasons why I say that finally it's the species that are able to adapt the species that are able to adapt that will survive. Like the Indian leopard. Highly adaptable. It will pick up dogs. That's why it lives around villages. So you get man-animal conflict. I mean, hunting a dog is like Chinese fast food for them. As against having to ambush or track or hunt a natural prey. It needs all the skill and instinct of a hunter. But for a dog, just go pick it up. So, as far as the issues and concerns, this is what we have gone through in the last decade. As far as the highlights are concerned, I think Bon Kapoor is the icing on the cake. Number two is that people have realized that conservation is a part and parcel of our genetic pool that we have to recognize that we must give importance to conservation at the grassroots level, and that's happening. Social media has been kind to us. The kind of visibility we get if we, so that's another campaign that we want to do, social media, because anybody would love to see a wolf or a tiger. Or, these are all what people do when they're commuting or sitting in a car. So they have the time and they kind of scroll through all these things. And that, if it goes viral, indirectly converts into conservation efforts.
So that was the final question I had for you today. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure having you on.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.